Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this very important broadcast. This is probably, I think so, the last Ambazonia this week with Paddy King for the year 2025. And it would probably be the most consequential because of the critical nature of the discussions that are involved. We will have a brief recap on the legalities of the discussion of last week about our prisoners of war. We anticipating probably the president will have that in his address. We're just a few days away from the end of year address that encapsulates. It's a kind of report of what the nation of Ambazonia has been doing this year. Two nations in Africa have some similarities in their struggle for sovereignty and freedom, and that's Somaliland and Ambazonia. For those who thought that the argument of Somaliland was baseless, was not historical, and could never find limelight, just a few hours ago, less than 48 hours ago, it is on the news headlines from all major media headlines that the state of Israel has, which is the first UN member state, has recognized Somaliland. Tonight I have with me on this panel the lawyers that will be looking on the historical and comparing it historically. If Somaliland could gain such recognition, what prompted it? Why is it? We know that Israel is a very good friend to the United States of America, and a friend of another could be the friend of another. So we are looking forward to a recognition of Ambazonia in the same kind. Will it also take 4 or 5 decades like it has been for Somaliland? What will Ambazonia need to do today to precipitate or shorten the time for their recognition? And if that is possible, what is the nation of Ambazonia currently doing? So we have the Commission Sec for Foreign Affairs here, Mr. Gana Valentine. That is a critical part of the conversation. We also have Barrister Fru John Nsoh and Barrister Mbeseha. I'm calling on all those who are watching us via our social media platforms to continue to share and to share and to share. We also look into neighboring Nigeria to have a discussion of what Trump promised. He promised he was going to strike terrorist activities, specifically against the Christians in neighboring Nigeria. The Nigerian government has acknowledged collaboration with the United States government in this act, but there is a contravention in their statements. Why the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Nigeria claims that it was about preventing the loss of lives. The White House posted and Trump tweeted specifically that it was against the ISIS movement that are targeting mostly Christians. Why the varying statements, and how is Nigeria, which government members initially criticized Trump's involvement or statements in this issue, how are they suddenly getting interest and talking differently? Is it based on pressure? What are the days looking there? There are no footages that seem to justify America's claim that terrorist camps have been ambushed and hundreds have died. We'll be back right after this break. I'm calling on you watching us on social media, on Facebook and on YouTube, to share and to share and to share. We'll be back.
whispers of Christmas in the heart of a land. Shadows stretch long as we take a stand. Hushed melodies carried on warm winds of grace. Remembrance of love in every space. In the still of the night, under the watchful stars, we gather as one despite all the scars. Voices rise softly, like candles they glow, for the ones we have lost, for the dreams we let go. To the children who've suffered, to the souls who know pain, this Christmas we sing, hope is not in vain. The gifts that we share, the love that we give, remind us that in Christ we're all here to live. So let the carols echo, let the stories unfold, from Ambazonia's mountains to hearts made of gold. In unity we rise, with an unyielding song, for together in spirit we know we belong. Hear the laughter of children even through the tears. Their joy shines bright, shattering our fears. Though the weight may feel heavy, our dreams dance in light, for the spirit of Christmas ignites in the night. For the prisoners, the displaced, the lost in despair, in this season of giving, let love be our prayer. Wrap them in warmth, a tapestry strong, reminding the world that they too belong. So let the carols echo, let the stories unfold, from Ambazonia's mountains to hearts made of gold. In unity we rise, with an unyielding song, for together in spirit we know we belong. With each note we sing, let it carry our plight, as we share in the light of this holy night. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, we gather together no matter what's done. In the symphony sacred, let our love take flight, embraced by the heavens, lifted up in light. This Christmas a promise, a flame ever bright, for Ambazonia's heart will reclaim its right. Together we hope, together we dream, united in spirit, love flows like a stream.
Wow, good evening, welcome, and Merry Christmas, Barrister Gana, Barrister Fru, Barrister Mbeseha. Sometime last year, we had this discussion about Somaliland, and we were comparing it. At the time, Somaliland were facing issues with Somalia, and the U.S. leaning towards Somalia. But as we speak right now, Somaliland has been recognized by Israel. I am thinking maybe is because of the issues between Somalia and the United States that has provoked this. Lots of things are happening. It's a discussion. We're going to look at it from different dimensions: US foreign policy, Israel's involvement, what impact would that cause? On one side, countries are recognizing Pakistan or Palestine, and Israel is recognizing Somaliland. Let us first of all look at the historical resemblance between Somaliland and Ambazonia and what it took for them to arrive where they are today. I'll begin with you, Barrister Gana, please.
Comrade Paddy, Director Paddy, thanks for the opportunity again to be on this show. Greetings to my comrades, my senior comrades, I should say, who are on this panel. Greetings to all Ambazonians who are watching from all corners of the globe, who are making every possible effort to regain our sovereignty. And thanks to the job that the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is doing and the international cabinet is doing as well. Regarding the move by Israel to recognize Somaliland and the whole history there that leads to Somaliland being a separate entity and having existed as a self-governing entity for quite a few years now. We have to remember that if you go and you do research on the transition of Somalia and Somaliland to independence, you will realize that the colonial powers botched it, just like they botched the independence of Ambazonia. And the only way that Somaliland was kept under the boot of oppression in some sort of union with Somalia was when Siad Barre, the then president of Somalia, for quite a long time, ruled Somalia with an iron fist, And when Somali came unglued in 1991, when the rebels overran Siad Barre's government, Somalia eventually came apart, and Somaliland asserted itself as an independent territory. What we have to observe and what we have to learn also has been the ability of the indigenes of Somaliland to galvanize themselves, to unite, to mobilize as one, to set up an independent administration in Somaliland where they have a functioning government, where they even have relations with other nations around the world. So if you look at the case of Somaliland, you will realize that Ambazonia's independence is not too much in a distant future. In fact, when we were dealing with the Swiss and working with the Swiss to prepare the groundwork for mediation under the auspices of the Swiss talks, the U.S. administration and the Swiss government sponsored certain learning exercises, to teach Ambazonians on the process of negotiation in preparation for La République coming to the table. And one of the parties that they brought in to help us learn from their example, were the indigenes or the government of Somaliland. We learned from them how they got themselves together, how they were able to unite all the factions, and there was a great deal that we learned in that exercise that we'll talk about more as the show proceeds here. They also brought people from East Timor. We dealt with people from South Africa. They brought cadres of the ANC for us to learn from them. So the evolution of Somaliland towards independence has been happening. And sometimes they say it happens slowly and slowly and slowly. And all of a sudden it clicks and it happens. So one thing that we have to remark is that Somaliland has had a very good relationship with Ethiopia. That is a bordering nation out there. In fact, last year, we'll remember that even Ethiopia struck a deal to have its outlet through Somaliland, a deal to use the ports in Somaliland, which Somalia protested very vehemently. But for a nation like Israel to recognize Somaliland as an independent nation means there is more to it than that, and we will get into that as the show proceeds here. But I'll let my other comrades speak on this issue, and then we will chime in. So later. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Barrister Fru, what's your overview of this situation? There's a lot
Well,
I'm going to be talking about, but let me get your overview.
Well, Paddy, thank you very much for another Saturday. Dear Ambazonians, welcome on board to this important discussion. At the end of the year, it is coming at a time when we are craving for our own sovereignty. Somaliland has been recognized by Israel. What is the catch? Because many countries in Europe started this year, around this year, in the middle of this year, recognizing Palestine. The recognition of Palestine went wild in Europe, and a lot of countries in Europe have recognized Palestine because of the attitude of the Israelis, the way the Israelis have attempted to annihilate Palestine and all that. Israel felt isolated and angry. Are they doing this recognition purely on diplomatic and foreign policy objectives, or they are doing it as a spite to what has happened to them for countries recognizing the Palestine? I wouldn't know, but I want to also say that Somaliland has survived as a nation on its own without recognition. They have a very important port, a very important seaway where Ethiopia had no choice but to negotiate with them. And I think that if you look at Ambazonia, we have more than we are sitting on the world's largest, one of the world's largest oil reserves. We are sitting on one of the world's forest reserve. We are sitting on a lot of minerals that the world need. And whatever is happening to us today, and the world is seemingly quiet, I don't believe that they are quiet because they know what we are sitting on. And I am hoping that what Israel has done, it will happen to Ambazonia. I was thinking why Israel will recognize Somaliland and will not recognize Ambazonia. And it got me thinking, Paddy, you must know that the special forces in Cameroon called the B have been trained by Israel, are being armed by Israel, and the commander is an Israeli. And I don't know how much of Israel's government involvement it is in Ambazonia. I mean, in the Cameroons, but Israel seems to be tied to La Republic of Cameroon more than to Ambazonia. Does that make sense? Given that everybody in the world knows that all the resources that La Republic of Cameroon are producing now and selling and surviving on are coming from Ambazonia. So this event this year was, I mean, this last few days has been very, very telling, and I am hoping that Ambazonia will be the next in in no so distant future. La Republic of Cameroon is collapsing and collapsing fast, and people should be thinking some countries that have economic interest in what is it sitting what is in Ambazonia should beginning to think of the alternative to La Republic of Cameroon, because La Republic of Cameroon is sinking and sinking very fast. Who wants to sink with a sinking ship? So let's wait and see the next few days, the next few weeks, the next few months, and see what happens to Ambazonia. Thank you.
Vice Mbeseha, please.
Thank you, Paddy, for having me. Now we're on Somaliland, but we're trying to look at Somaliland vis-a-vis Ambazonia or British Southern Cameroon, who seem to be the same historically. Population-wise, Somaliland is slightly lower, smaller than Ambazonia. There are about 6 million people, while we think that we are more than 8 million. But historically, we fall on the same path. Somaliland was a trust territory. In fact, it was the protectorate from 1884 of the British. Then after the war, Second World War, they became a protectorate. It became a trust territory, just like Southern Cameroon. They were a trust territory administered by Italy with the purpose of granting them independence at the end of the day. And indeed, they were granted independence on 1st of July, 1960. Somaliland became an independent country. But down the road, a few months or weeks after that, Greater Somalia, they agreed to unite. And down the road, it did not work. They agreed to break, they are fighting to break off. And so that's why they're exactly like us. They were a trust territory, they were a trust territory. They were supposed to be given independence, they were given one, but Somalia took over. Now they are trying to get out and they are facing problems. But dealing with the recognition of Somaliland, that should not be our worry. There are 193 countries in the United Nations. At least those are the ones officially recognized at the United Nations. And so each of those 193 countries, they include Israel, create their own alliances, to create embassies and connections with different countries. That's the international club. That's the largest international club. And so whether it is Israel or any other country recognizing Somalia, that is not a bone of contention. They have the right to that. But if this recognition is what Somaliland is looking for, and if their goal is to get into the club of nations, the 193 member organization called the United Nations, then they still have a long way to go. Because not all countries in the world which are recognized are members of the United Nations. For example, Kosovo is recognized by more than 100 countries. They are not members of the United Nations. Spanish Sahara is recognized by 44 countries. They are not yet members of the United Nations. Taiwan is recognized by more than approximately five countries around the world, members of the United Nations. They are not members of the United Nations. Because for a country to pass the test and join that club from which we are looking for salvation, it has to meet a number of criteria. The first criteria is that recognition must be transformed into United Nations General Assembly resolution, starting by passing it through the Security Council, and then finally being voted and adopted by the General Assembly. Those stages are far, for now, very, very far from Somalia. Because if we were that easy, for example, Kosovo, which is recognized by the United States, which has more than 100 countries of the world recognizing it, would have been a member of the United Nations. Right now, they are not. If that were just all what was needed, Spanish Sahara, which has 44 countries of Africa recognizing that country, would have been a member of the United Nations. They are not yet there. Because when you become a member of the United Nations, there are privileges that go with it and perhaps rights. And that's why you saw the struggle over Palestine becoming so intense. Palestine, until recently, was only an observer state, just like the Vatican. There were only two. But because of the work done by Netanyahu against Palestine, he saw the whole world rise to it. They are today a full-fledged member of the United Nations. And so, taking the cue from there, Somaliland has been begging for recognition around the world. They have gotten one. I don't know whether Ethiopia has officially recognized them, but they have gotten one. That's a bold step. They should be encouraged to do the same. Ambazonia will go through the same stages, as I've said. It's not bound. You're not bound to be a member of the United Nations, even as a country. You can put your own currency. You can join international organizations without being a member of the club. Kosovo, for example, has joined the International Monetary Fund. And so, whatever is the motivation behind Israel, that is not our problem. They have the right to make their friends, just like they have the right to make their enemies. But what is important for us as Ambazonians, we should know that after every struggle, there's payoff. Somaliland has set up its structures. Most countries around the world refuse to recognize them until today that Israel has officially done it. And so the same thing applies to Ambazonia. We should not be discouraged. Somalia is smaller than us. Somalia doesn't have that much money that we have, though they are strategically more important perhaps. But we have different advantages. And we can only hope and pray that among the 193 member states of the United Nations, several, not one, will come to recognize us. Several, not one, will sponsor us to get into the United Nations Club through the Security Council, through the General Assembly. And so that's the lesson we have to learn coming 2026, or at the end of 2025. That's the lesson Ambazonians have to learn. Somalia has gotten to where they got with one member, not without difficulties. They have faced the same difficulties that we have. Among them, perhaps traitors, internal sellouts, and so on and so forth. And so we can only congratulate them for the achievement and hope they will get more. Israel, as disliked as it seems to be at the world stage, but they also have allies, which allies can tend to support their cause, who might all turn in bloc or singularly to recognize Somaliland. That is progress for Somaliland. The same progress should be applied to Southern Cameroon and Ambazonia. That's all I can say about that for now. Over to you.
Now, Mr. Gana, I'm coming back to you. If you listen very closely, if you listen exactly, let me get the granddad. The grandchildren will not allow him to participate freely. So our audience, please kindly bear with us. So if you listen very closely to what Mr. Mbeseha is saying, there are two critical things involved, which I would think that you should get involved, but you should expatiate on and make an observation. But even before you do that, I want us to look at this. There's a lot of comparison to be done. When I listen to you, you made mention of the relationship. Barrister Fru also made mention of the relationship between Somaliland and one of its closest neighbor, that's Ethiopia. That relationship helped them in a very unique way. Now, when you're looking at Ambazonia, you're looking at our very close neighbor, Nigeria. The relationship between Ambazonia and Nigeria is strange. We've had our leaders kidnapped from Abuja with the aid of members of Nigerian government. The Nigerian government has not acknowledged responsibility, but they cannot claim to be ignorant of what took place in Abuja. So these are some things that we have to look at it. Two things to take into consideration. Number one, becoming a member of the United Nations and having power nations like the United States of America or Israel recognizing you. Barrister Mbeseha spoke of Kosovo being recognized by the United States of America and gave a couple of examples. Now you realize that in this dispensation of the world right now, a nationhood is not just dependent on United Nations membership, even though that's critical. It also is dependent on you having structures, not just pilot structures like Ambazonia, but having structures on the ground that can govern yourself like Somalia, having collaborations and institutions within nations that would permit you to operate, and so on and so forth. So much for us to talk about. But then I want you to look at this comparison, the way our neighbors behave towards us, and the strategies we are probably or we need to put in place, or the lessons we need to learn to make sure that we can get either recognition from power nations or become members of the United Nations. Which do you think might come first based on our strategic approach? Vice Gana, so much in that for you to unpack, but I think that's the core of this conversation.
Yes, you emphasize the need for us to utilize the tool of democracy. I mean, the tool of diplomacy to ensure that we are steering the wheel towards recognition by other states and towards the ultimate regaining of our sovereignty. And you bring the case of Nigeria, you highlight the case of Nigeria. Nigeria is a very complex case because our relationship with the Federal Republic of Nigeria, when I say us, I mean the government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, aka the erstwhile Southern Cameroons. It has a complicated relationship with Nigeria. And if you look at it from 20,000 feet above ground, you realize that Nigeria is very suspect about Ambazonia's independence or about the potential independence of Ambazonia. First, you have to realize that when they talk about the Cameroons, all right, and the Cameroons that got trusteeship status from the League of Nations going back to the end of the First World War, you realize that it wasn't just the Southern Cameroons. It was the whole territory stretching from the Ambas Bay right up to the Lake of Niger. So all of that territory, north and east of Nigeria, belong to the British Trust territory of the Cameroons. And so Nigeria benefited from those plebiscites that were held, in that Nigeria ended up expanding its own territory by getting hold of the northern Cameroons. And so had everything gone well, had Britain did what it was supposed to do, Britain would have handed independence to the British Cameroons, which included northern and southern Cameroons. And so and Britain was involved in what we call self-dealing, because that territory was not Britain's to parcel and then have one part gain independence through Nigeria and the other part maybe through French Cameroon or through Nigeria. Britain was supposed to, consistent with UN Resolution 1514, Britain was supposed to hand over independence to the British Cameroon. So us and that northeastern part of Nigeria would have been one contiguous territory. So you have to go into the minds of the Nigerian government to say, okay, if the UN decides to unravel all of that, how is it going to affect that part of northern Nigeria? Would that part of will that be revisited? But again, in law, if somebody is not coming to the court for remedy, you cannot address a party that is not there in the court asking for remedy. And that part of northeastern Nigeria is not asking for remedy to rejoin the southern Cameroon or to rejoin Cameroon. But again, you can understand that the British are going to still be leery of that. When it comes to, again, Nigeria, because you touched on that point regarding Nigeria, which brings a good contrast to Ethiopia, which supports Somaliland. You have to realize that with the nation of Nigeria, there is the issue of the Igbos. And Nigeria is not very settled in having the Igbos as an assuredly integral part of Nigeria. So if we gain independence, do we now become a territory that the Igbos could use to leverage their own independence even more, and vice versa? So there is a lot of undoing in that Gulf of Guinea that gives the
Yeah.
powers some reason to sort of put the thumb on our independence, which is very clear. And yeah, independence is very clear. There's a third factor that I want to consider. If you look at this great power plays, you have to realize that, for example, you see Trump talking about we want Greenland. We want Greenland, and maybe they are attempting maybe to strike a deal with Ukraine. Now, maybe if you get the Eastern Donbass, you also cover your eye if we get Greenland, or you cover your eye if we find a means to develop Gaza as a Western affiliated territory. You never know what deals beneath the surface are happening between these great powers. What do I mean by this? If you look at the northern Nigeria that was part of Cameroon, it was dealt and attached to the British territory of Nigeria. Now let's look at eastern Togoland, which is now part of Ghana. You see, again, Togoland was given to the British as a wholesome territory. Eastern Ghana could have become part of Togo, but again, due to these schemes and machinations of UN resolutions and plebiscite votes, Eastern Togo or Western Togo became part of Ghana. So look at it from the great power view. Britain gained the northern Cameroons. Britain gained the Eastern Togo. Can Britain now come support Ambazonia, prying itself from French Cameroon, which the British might see as a quid pro quo, which France might see as a quid pro quo for northern Nigeria having been attached, northern Cameroons having been attached to Nigeria, and eastern Ghana, or what they call Ghana Togoland now having become part of Ghana. So there's a lot of diplomatic complexity that holds us back. However, the possibility of us gaining independence, the possibility of us gaining diplomatic recognition will depend on us and the diplomatic moves that we can make to ensure that happens. So, with regards to Nigeria, it's a little complicated. Maybe my senior comrades on the panel can shed more light on that. So,
Okay, Vice Fru.
Yes, Paddy, I when I was doing the case for Ayuk Tabe and 9 others, I visited Abuja at least 5 times. I was in the Federal High Court in Abuja, along with Fele Falana, who was the lead counsel who brought the matter. And I can tell you that if a cursory reading of that judgment will tell you that Nigeria is not our enemy. At least that's my conclusion. Because if you read that judgment and look at the geography of where the Southern Cameroon is and the eastern part of Nigeria is, and if you look at the way our refugees were welcomed by the frontline states to Ambazonia, from the beginning, we had no problems. Even now, we don't have any problems. The problems are problems of survivor. The various governors of the frontline states have been very supportive of our cause and our refugees. And that is significant. The federal government of Nigeria is a very complicated network. I know that they may be afraid of coming close to us because of the Biafran Nigerian war and the present Biafran agitation. led by Nwanko Kalu. It gives them sleepless nights, and it would seem that it is playing a lot to our disadvantage in the relations between our two countries, Nigeria and Cameroon. But Nigeria, truly speaking,
You are talking about
prefers
Namdi Kanu.
Namdi Kanu. Nigeria,
Okay.
Nigeria, truly speaking, I don't think that Nigeria is completely our enemies, because Nigeria, if you look at northern part of Cameroon that went to Nigeria, it was English speaking. You look at the part that went to the Togoland that went to Ghana is English speaking, and you can understand that if we had it going with these francophones, I don't want to bring in this language thing inside, but it plays into the mix. The very culture of the way francophone countries are governed, the dictatorial nature of the francophone countries have played very much into the complication of the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia vis-a-vis Nigeria. And what we did, instead of joining Nigeria, which we understood who they were, we had the same upbringing by the British. We had the same schooling like the British. Some southern Cameroonians are still in Lagos as we speak. Now, if Cameroon had received us the way Nigeria would have, as people who speak the same language and the same culture, I am not excluding the troubles that the Igbo people as a tribe brought to us. That's a different story. But I'm talking about the general outlook. Northern Nigeria has survived in Nigeria, and Northern Cameroon has survived in Nigeria because it is part and parcel of Nigeria. They speak English, they have their own governor, they have voted their own governor, they have their own management, and they are attached to the federal government by operation of the federal structure. I don't believe that Nigeria is an enemy. We have to do a lot of diplomatic footwork in Abuja. And we have not attempted. We have not even done it. Let me finish. If we had initiated some kind of diplomatic footwork and walked the corridors of power in Abuja, Nigeria would not have the type of will not treat us the way they treated us by some northern general deporting our leaders back to Cameroon to be killed. It would not have happened. If it was if that general was from the frontline states, I don't think he would have something like that would have happened. Because I lived those five times that I was in Abuja. Nigerians are very, very sympathetic with the Southern Cameroons in general. And if you look at that, read that judgment, read the way that the judge in the Federal High Court in Abuja couched that judgment, it didn't leave any room for hatred.
Yeah, Barrister Fru, let me come in there real quickly so that I can cue in Barrister Mbeseha. You see, just so we stay the focus on this conversation, and you have said something very critical there. You realize that if you people who are supposed to be at the front line of diplomatic relations at this time of war within Ambazonia, you're saying that we have not really done too much. Don't you think that could probably be because of the early moments of the struggle we're currently in? There was this breach of trust can we actually secure our political prisoners within Nigeria? Whether you call it
Yeah.
North or the front line or whatever, this happened in Nigeria. And Nigeria has done almost same with Nnamdi Kanu, where they went and kidnapped him from another country. So there's a lot of similarity with the way the Abuja government and the Yaoundé government function with their strategies. But this is the point I want to make. If you look at the fact that Ambazonian government has not really approached the Nigerian government for diplomatic relations, like you would say, I don't know how detailed that could be. Probably it's because of this aspect of trust. We have been in the courts with Nigeria for over 3 times, and we've won twice. A couple of times we've been in court with the Nigerian government, and we've won the case. So, by Mbeseha, I'm queuing in with you right now. What I'm trying for us to look at, do you think that the relationship between Somaliland and Ethiopia gave them some ascendance in that region as their existence were concerned? They had a more collaborative neighbor than Ambazonia, because Ambazonia has not had, since we left Enugu in 1954, has not had that kind of a diplomatic, as a southern Cameroonian state, has not had any relationship in that status with Nigeria. Do you think that that could have been one of the things that's affecting our progress when it comes to interrelations, international relations and diplomacy, could be the fact that we're engulfed in a region that we really don't have friends that are proud enough or bold enough to recognize us at any level? But Mbeseha, please.
Well, me once more to say this. The relationship what with Somalia and Ethiopia, there are two different things. The relationship that Somalia has with Ethiopia is essentially strategic. Why is Ethiopia
Yeah.
so concerned with Somalia or Somaliland? It is simply because they want access to the sea. Ethiopia is landlocked. The only access to the world through the sea is through Somaliland. And so they do all that to make sure they have that access. But unfortunately, I'm aware of that at this point, even Ethiopia has recognized Somaliland. I'm not aware of that. They have that close relationship with them, but they have not recognized them. But let us go to what is important. Nigeria and Cameroon. Nigeria and Ambazonia. Our relationship, to say the least, has been very, very hostile. I disagree with Pastor Nsoh when he says that Nigeria is not the enemy. No. When we talk about Nigeria, we're not talking about individual states, the Cross River states and all those states. We are talking about the federal government of Nigeria. The federal government of Nigeria, I can say it with emphasis, is so hostile to Ambazonia for good reasons. Remember, when we administered together from 1946 to 1954, and when the 13 parliamentarians left Enugu to come back to Buea, it was not a joyful occasion for Nigeria. Until then, they had the Governor General who ruled Nigeria, and Cameroon, the Governor General for Cameroon and Nigeria. He lived in Lagos. And so when we walked away from Enugu in 1953, actually, it was not a peaceful separation. It was not a very joyful departure. What was the reason for doing it? Remember what they call benevolent neutrality. They were debating independence, and there was a party called the NCNC, Nigeria and Cameroon, political party led by Azikiwe and all those people there. The 13 southern Cameroonians who were there say, we declare ourselves benevolent. We have nothing to do with Nigerian politics. We are leaving Nigerian politics. We are going back home. And they came to Buea. A few months earlier, in 1954, they successfully established their own state, their own region, call it like that. Was it a peaceful separation? No. The Nigerians did not forgive us for that. Because we, the politicians then at the time, saw in Nigeria something very, very unpopular. Remember, the main reason was that we were with the Igbos in Enugu. And they treated us like they call it dustbins. And so that fueled the anger. And the 13 Southern Cameroonians left and came to Buea. Until then, the British have believed wholly that they're going to form Nigeria were independent Cameroon. That was the belief of Cameroon, of the colonial master. And so that became an embarrassment to them. To make it worse, this after 1954. In 1956, the British explorers discovered the oil wealth in the Bakassi Peninsula that happened to be linked with the Niger Delta gas. In the present day Nigeria, like then, oil resources belong to the federal government. They are not state property. And so when the British discovered that this area called Bakassi, which is part of southern Cameroon, is so rich, they made up their mind, these people must remain with Nigeria. And that's why in 1957, just a year after that, when they came to Mamfe, the Mamfe conference, it was to discuss independence for southern Cameroon. And what did the British say? No independence for you. Full stop. You might join either Nigeria or join Cameroon. None of those countries then was independent. They believed they were going to join Nigeria. Because French Cameroon was never interested in getting us. French Cameroon had been interested way back in 1919 when they were partitioning Cameroon. They were interested in getting Douala, which was a seaport for them. They had no access. They had a colony in Chad. They had a colony in Central African Republic. They had nowhere else to ship things. So they begged and said, let us, Britain, give us this Douala. That was what the French wanted. And they got Douala. They didn't even understand our where. That's why from the beginning they were so reluctant about this journey. Fast forward, the British, again, are not our friends. We had led them under these conditions. And then they have never forgotten that. Remember, the Green Tree Agreement came after the war with Nigeria. What was being fought in Bakassi, the French Cameroon was interested in the oil that was found there. Nigeria was interested in the resources that are found there. French Cameroon was not interested in any other thing else. They were not interested in the borders. And maybe we don't know. By 1961, there's a place that Basanso will know if you have traveled to Nigeria from Mamfe by land. There's a place called Obudu Ranch. Obudu Ranch today is Nigeria. It's so big a ranch. But it was Cameroon. It was Cameroon. In other words, it was British Southern Cameroon. The French abandoned it because it had no meaning to them. They didn't go to fight for it. The Nigerians adopted it. Today, it is one of the richest ranches in Nigeria. And then fast forward again, I want to say, I disagree that they are not enemies. In 2002, believing that Nigeria was our friend, the group of Ambazonians sued the federal government of Nigeria in Abuja, 2002. What were they requesting? They were requesting the federal government of Nigeria to take action in international courts, international jurisdiction, to plead the cause of Ambazonia. That case lasted for a few months. And what happened? The federal government, the Attorney General, with the authority from the federal government, came and signed a consent judgment to do all what the Ambazonians were asking the federal government to do. That they would take our case to the United Nations. They would take our case to all international organizations. It was a consent judgment under the government of Obasanjo in 2002. How many presidents have been in Nigeria since 2002? You can count them. But a consent judgment is binding on the parties. That consent judgment was binding on Nigeria then. It is still binding on the federal government of Nigeria today. And so why have they not taken action which they promised by their own consent before the own court in Abuja to do it? Is it a mark of friendship? Certainly not. Again, back to the Green Tree Agreement. When the judgment in The Hague says Bakassi is Cameroon, are they talking of Cameroon or the people of Cameroon? No. If you read the whole judgment, I think paragraph 82 or something like that, they state there in that judgment that what they call Bakassi is part of British Southern Cameroon. That account of that judgment has joined with Cameroon come October 1st, 1961. So if we should now, as independent country, yeah, they have no links to go and claim Bakassi because they were fighting for the oil there. They have no reason to claim Bakassi. They have no legal status. And so this is the international court saying it. Cameroon has agreed to that. Nigeria has agreed to that. They have even purportedly withdrawn their army from there. But they have refused to table our case before the International Court of Justice. Neither have they brought it before any other international institutions. After Obasanjo, we've had Goodluck, we've had 4-5 presidents in Nigeria, 2002, that's 24, 25, 23 years ago. And so is this a mark of friendship? No. When they adopted the CC from Abuja, it was not the state government of whatever state in Nigeria, it was the federal government. I don't care whether the man who gave the order came from the north or the south or the east, he was a federal worker. And so what has been the consequence of that illegality performed on Ambazonia in Nigeria? Zero consequence. Have they punished these people who did that, who violated their own law to send these people to Cameroon for trial? They have not done it. It is 10 years. It has not been done now. It was not done under the previous president of Nigeria. And so how do you call them friends? They are certainly not friends. And so they have no interest in handling our case. They think that we are hostile to them. Because even if they support our case and will become independent, the Bakassi, which is because the oil-rich area, which still remain Ambazonia, will not be in Nigeria. And so are they happy to lose this important thing? No. The issue of Northern Cameroon is so insignificant. What they got from Northern Cameroon was zero. If at the best, they got Boko Haram. And so there's nothing to compare between Southern Cameroon and Nigeria and Northern Cameroon. We're strategically too important. We're economically too important for people to fight for. But who are those who are fighting over our resources now? It is either Nigeria through the Bakassi War or Cameroon trying to maintain us as an entity they claimed joined them in 1961. That's their sole claim. And so there's nothing to compare between Somaliland and Ambazonia. Again, Somaliland, the only neighbor, Ethiopia, is recognizing them. They have not yet recognized them, but they are cooperating with them in order to have access to the sea. We here, Cameroon is fighting against us in order to have access to our resources, which are already having, they're exploiting, they're stealing the money. Remember, Ahijo was never interested in anything. He didn't even know the value, the monetary value of Ambazonia until about the early 1970s, when the fires for the oil were disclosed to them. And what did they do? They said it must be a refinery. They built one by 1975, and they've been tapping the oil. I have a friend who took part in some of the negotiations in Garawa at the time. He told me he was an Amazonian. He understands French. I gone to the bilingual to the translation school in Boya. He told me that he overheard the French people, Francophones, saying that let us build the refinery, get out all this oil from that place, if possible, before they ever revolt to go away. And that's what they're doing. They have gotten all what they wanted to get from us. Now they are moving the refinery, which they built urgently in 1975. It is now being moved to Kribi. So nothing is left of Ambazonia. So the history and the struggle of Ambazonia is strategically important. It's tactically important for us to understand the underpinnings of what is going on. And so, again, I am also witness this thing. The Nara 10 are still in jail. But we've seen the Nara 10 send some lawyers to go and plead their cause in the Nigerian Senate. I've seen them 2, 3, 4 sessions there, paid by Ambazonian money. They went there, they presented their case. What has come out of the federal Senate in Nigeria on those presentations? Zero. And so they are hostile to us for obvious reasons. We have to survive, not depending on them. If it is necessary, we'll survive with them as equals. Over to you.
I really thought that we should have had the conversation the way we are having it, because it helps to enlighten, It also helps to create some awareness among our community, and then to make the international community and foreign partners understand that we have a wealth of historical and legal understanding of the way things function. But then, this is a
Paddy,
very critical question before we make a conclusion. This is a critical question before we make a conclusion. We're not concluding. I'm coming to you, by Fru. You will have your opportunity. Or if you want to say something briefly, you can go ahead, Barrister Fru. Very briefly, please.
yes, I wanted to say that La Republic of Cameroon is hostile to us. They are fighting us. They have killed us. They have burned our villages. They have done all the atrocities that anybody can imagine. But when we left Nigeria, was there any fighting? I was young then. I didn't even know anything about that. But at least I've read. Was there any fighting? How can anybody say that when we left? Nigeria was not even independent when we left. All of us, Nigeria and those of and certain Cameroons, were under the British. It's the British that are hostile to us, not Nigeria. Nigeria did not stop us from living nor fight us like La Republic has done so far. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and
I
and,
think
and for us, listen to me. And for us to have these two giant countries as enemies, we have to choose one. And I'm making the case that we have not walked the corridors of diplomacy in Nigeria to conclude that Nigeria is hostile to us. Yes, they have not executed all the judgments that we obtained. Yes, because Cameroon and Nigeria are independent countries and belong to the African Union. So Nigeria could not come to our aid, either judiciary or otherwise, because it will create some friction between Cameroon and Nigeria. And that's what they were trying to prevent. And secondly, Ahijo helped Nigeria not to allow military equipment to come through Cameroon to get to Biafra. And that is why Nigeria has been very cautious with the way, with the conflict that we have vis-a-vis Cameroon. Should we not tie Nigeria as a hostile country and Cameroon as a hostile country? Then what? And then how do we live with two hostile nations near us? I'm arguing that we have not walked the corridors of diplomacy in Nigeria to make such a conclusion. Those judgments are still active. Those judgments are still active.
I would think that Tafawa Balewa, after he made his proposal, campaigning, because if you look at it, the colonial forces or the colonial powers, that's Britain and France, had some strange negotiations about the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroons. And perhaps that is how they ignored the UN charters and gave a strange imposition, which was a plebiscite. Now, when Tafawa Balewa made his campaign, Amadou Ahidjo made his, and the fact that our people leaned more towards French Cameroon, that could have created some spite. These are speculations that are very possible. If people are hunting, I would like to use the language of Molanjo Liptumbe. If there are two suitors and one wins the case, the other party might not be in a position to create a public fight. But there could be some frowning and grievances. I've heard even some ignorant politicians in Nigeria make the statement that we give you people the opportunity to be a part of us. You choose to be in the other side and you're not crying. But that's not the core of this discussion. What is important, or what I wanted to pull out, is the current relationship between the Southern Cameroons and its neighbors, which we know one of the neighbors did not even come into a relationship, but came into a recolonization and is currently occupying our land. Everything that happened was a recolonization. And on the other hand, we have in Nigeria that for whatever reason is not fair with us. Nigeria, even with Southern Cameroonian refugees, as the federal government have not been very fair. I work with refugees every day. I report the stories every day. It is true that they're occupying it, but Nigeria knows that it was in defiance of the international law of non-refoulement. These guys were under DSS for days and weeks. How did they go through the international airport into Yaoundé? It's something nobody can really convince me that this Nigerian government was so porous that Rene Sadi and Bankwi went into Nigeria and picked out people that have been in detention and was all over the media without collaboration with the government. I can never believe that, no matter how good you explain it. That's my opinion. Now let's make progress. Barrister,
Let's not look at the ABT.
We can talk about
ABC. ABC is an open. ABC is a television station that is watched all over the world. We cannot openly say that Nigeria is hostile to us when we have not done the necessary.
We also have a right to present our grievances.
No, we cannot do that.
As far as
we cannot do that.
Character is towards us.
Paddy,
we have a
Paddy,
right
let
to
me make a
present
correction,
our
please.
grievances.
Let us make a correction. No. Let us make this. Let me make this historical correction, please. You see, we can have opinions. Opinions are different from facts. In 1954, Southern Cameroon left Nigeria. Southern Cameroon left the East Nigerian Enugu House of Assembly. We were still part of Nigeria until 1959, which is why in 1954, the Governor General in Lagos was the Governor General for Cameroon and Nigeria. Northern Cameroon and Southern Cameroon were still full part of Nigeria. We didn't leave Nigeria until 1959. Even when we saw the opportunity for leaving Nigeria, the UK organized a plebiscite in Northern Cameroon in November 1959, urging them to join Nigeria 1st October in getting independence together. So we're still part of it. Although they voted no and said we'll postpone that thing.
Was Nigeria a nation?
I've said Nigeria was due to become independent 1st of October 1960. And in November 1959, the British organized a plebiscite essentially in Northern Cameroon, asking them to choose between getting independent immediately when Nigeria comes 1st October or deferring the independent issue for some time later. That is just a historical fact. You can always challenge it with another fact. And which is why they didn't even believe in it. In 1959 again. Let me finish. If we're dealing with history, let people know where we spot us. Came March 1959 again. I've said this many times here. At the UN General Assembly, they brought up the file for Southern Cameroon and North and East Cameroon for independence. The one for East Cameroon came up first in the same session. And the French said, well, we are prepared for independence, come 1st January. Based on that, the UN General Assembly passed Resolution 1349, saying Southern British East Cameroon, French Cameroon, we become independent 1st of January 1960. It was the United Nations. The next day, they brought out the same file for Southern Cameroon. And the British stood and said, look, these people cannot have independence. We must give them a plebiscite. Then the United Nations asked him, what plebiscite are you going to, what question do you want to ask? The British were not ready. And so that was Resolution 1350, just the next one to the Cameroon. I said, okay, based on the proposition from the UK, we shall revisit this issue come October, this March. We shall revisit it in 6 months. By then, the administrative authority would have decided on what question to ask in their proposed plebiscite. And that accounts for, I've seen something floating around there, Resolution 1352, which came on in October 1959, where the plebiscite issue was now settled on the two questions, the two alternatives. Shall Southern independent by joining Nigeria or by joining Cameroon? Again, at this time in October, neither Nigeria no Cameroon was even independent. So let us get these historical facts clear, and then we can add our opinions if we disagree with the facts. But the
Okay,
facts remain the
the
facts.
point where gotten, please. Let's make progress. You see, the interest of this conversation.
Paddy.
I'm going to give you the mic. I'm giving you the mic. You add what you want to add. I'll give you the mic.
Okay.
You add everything you want to add. I'm saying that my
Okay.
interest, right, is to observe the attitude of Nigeria. At whatever scale we want to look at it, historically, legally, and currently, because the current behavior is very important. If we have not approached them, but Nigeria doesn't need to be educated about who we are as a people historically and legally. We have been in the court in Nigeria to advocate for sovereignty-related cases at least twice in Abuja. The situation of the Naira 10 was just the second instance.
It's life.
Before we went to, you get what I'm trying to say, Barrister Gana. So where I'm driving up and pushing us to go is so that we can learn some lessons and strategize better. We are expecting, maybe our expectations are too high, but I would say it is not even at a level that we can applaud by certain scale. So Barrister Gana, please, let me try to meet Barrister Mbeseha. I think Barrister Mbeseha needs to. Okay, so Barrister Gana, this is the situation. While you make a comment to add with those historical stuff, I want you to talk to us. What are some of the lessons we can learn from Somaliland, the way they have compacted themselves to where they are today? And that's where we're going to be concluding as every other person comments. Yeah, Barrister Gana, please.
Yes, before I speak on what lessons we need to learn, let me just add that the British thoroughly botched our case, because when the UN General Assembly, through the decolonization committees here, and Barrister Mbeseha did an excellent job pointing some of these resolutions that took place. Again, resolution 1349 had to do with French Cameroon here, and then we had resolution 1350 and resolution 1352, which had to do with contemplating on what questions to ask the Southern Cameroons in the plebiscite. Something that I just wanted to add to bring clarity to the situation, because a lot of people out there are going to be asking, why did the Southern Cameroons not just move for absolute independence? Why did they have to join Nigeria or French Cameroon? And if you've been asking that question, then you need to be reminded, or you need to be informed, that answer lies in the Mbeseha Conference. And the Mbeseha Conference took place in 1959, when all of these resolutions, 1350, 1352, were being written and contemplated on what questions to ask. Because the Southern Cameroons delegation, when we botched out of the Eastern House of Assembly in 1953 in Enugu, where we set up self-government in Boya in 1954, we let that push out of Enugu, not because we wanted to come join French Cameroon. That's something that we need to know very well. And then I'm going to throw in a little aside here. I know people criticize Estimuna a lot. You know, Estimuna has received a bulk of criticism about our history. But what people do not realize is that, by the way, the Eastern House of Assembly had a quorum where it wasn't functional, or decisions made in the Eastern House of Assembly did not become law unless the Southern Cameroons, or a certain percentage of the Southern Cameroons, participate, or a entire delegation participated in the deliberations in the Eastern House of Assembly. And when the Southern Cameroons agreed to botch out, some of those 13 parliamentarians, in fact, the majority of them wanted to go back. The person that held out and enabled us getting out of the Eastern House of Assembly was Estimuna. So that is one historical fact that is very much swept under the carpet, that leads you to sort of revise the character of who Estimuna was. He was a lone voice who held his ground, and we never went back to the Eastern House of Assembly. Now, coming to these resolutions where I said the answer lies in the Manfred Conference of 1959 was because the Southern, remember, the United Nations mandated countries that had colonies and countries that had territories to give independence to those territories according to the freely expressed desire of its peoples. Freely expressed desires of his people. And in the Manfred Conference, our people got together. All the parliamentarians, the leaders, the funds, they got together and they decided that for these plebiscites that were being contemplated, again in UN Resolution 1350 and UN Resolutions 1352, what should be the question on the plebiscites? And a vote was taken in the Manfred Conference on two options that were to be at the plebiscite. The first option was vote between joining Nigeria and joining French Cameroon. And the second option was vote between joining Nigeria and outright independence for the Southern Cameroon. That was the second option. By a vote of 33 to 67% in there, and 67% of the Southern Cameroonian leaders voted that the question in the plebiscite should be a question of either joining the Federal Republic of Nigeria or outright independence for the Southern Cameroons. Let me repeat that. The leaders of the Southern Cameroons decided in the Manfred Conference that the vote in the plebiscite should be between either joining Nigeria as a separate province of Nigeria or a separate region of Nigeria, or outright independence for the Southern Cameroons. And this is where the British committed criminality, because they went back into the decolonization committees, and the decision that came out was to have the vote on the plebiscite be between joining Nigeria and French Cameroon. The leaders of the Southern Cameroons had already rejected that. So they had a vote forced on them, which they had already said they did not want. So I just wanted to clarify that issue. Now, on the issue of what do we learn from Somaliland as regards to Ambazonia, or the erstwhile Southern Cameroons here. Now, there are some things that we need to recognize. These are hard facts that we need to recognize as the difference between Somaliland and Ambazonia. The first thing is that Somaliland already controls its territory. You know, they have military control, police control, they have a government that is seated, they already have a multi-party democracy system in Somaliland. Now, if you look at the map of Somaliland, you'll see that the map of Somaliland, a lot of Somaliland is north of Ethiopia. And so, there's a big part of Somaliland that is already shielded by Ethiopia from Somali. You have Somaliland, and then you have Puntland, and then you have Somalia down south. So you have to transgress Puntland to get to Somaliland, but Ethiopia, Somaliland is up here, and Ethiopia is down here, shielding Somaliland from Somalia, which gives them the ability to organize in their territory, be able to create a government, be able to create a police force, and be able to defend themselves from Somalia. Ambazonia does not have that luxury. French Cameroon is a very wide border where they can infiltrate from so many angles to attack, kill, maim our people, and burn our villages, as we've already seen. So that is one huge advantage there. And we also have to realize that Puntland is still a disputed territory between those two. But again, we have to learn by having a throwback to history. These territories in Africa that have disputes in them as regards to territorial control here. You have Somaliland, you have Southwest, the Western Sahara, and you had Namibia as well. Well, you had Eritrea that already became independent. Another case that we need to learn from is Sudan, the South Sudan as we knew it. Again, we had bordering countries, Kenya, Uganda, who were supporting the movement in Southern Sudan there, the SPLM, the Southern Sudan People's Liberation Movement there, headed by John Garang. So you have to realize that we lack that continuity in our borders where we can have people support us. So we have to learn from that. And in learning from that, we have to strategize on how to navigate that deficiency. We have to throw ourselves back to the situation of Namibia. And our situation is very similar with Namibia because all of us came out of the Treaty of Versailles, where we were all trust territories. Again, just like Cameroon and French Cameroon, Namibia had a long-running border with South Africa. But they fought their way again through SWAPO, where Sam Nujoma led them towards independence. But another lesson to learn from Namibia, as we echo the situation of Somaliland, is that they had a unified leadership, a unified government. Namibia had a unified front headed by Sam Nujoma. Sudan had a unified front headed by John Garang there. Where do Ambazonians have to learn? We have to learn to be unified. And that is one of the saddest evolutions of our conflict. Because coming out of the consortium in Cameroon, and the SCACUF was set up, and from SCACUF, we went into having the interim government. But in that transition from consortium to SCACUF, a lot of people, a lot of elements, indigenes of the Southern Cameroons, instead of uniting for a common leadership, instead of folding under the interim government and ultimately the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, we had a lot of egomaniacs who said, let's see who gets to Boya first. The person who gets to Boya first is going to rule. And so we've had this disunity in the Southern Cameroon's quest for independence, which makes the rest of the world somehow suspect of us. That look, we cannot even unite as a front, as the Southern Sudanese did, as the Namibians did, as the Somalians have done, which we can copy from to fight for independence. What are we going to do if we gain independence? Are we going to tear ourselves apart? So those are huge lessons to learn from Namibia, from Somaliland, from South Sudan, and strategize on how we can unite our people. If we can unite our people, then we'll have a more potent front to be able to attack, whether it's in diplomacy and in other realms, to be able to regain our sovereignty. So the biggest contrast between us and Somaliland is, again, that territorial nature of our territory vis-a-vis of Somaliland vis-a-vis Ethiopia, and us vis-a-vis French Cameroon.
Now, Barrister Gana, please, before I give the mic to Barrister Fru and then to Barrister Mbeseha, I want you to specifically suggest ways, understanding you have worked at different levels of the movement, at the county level, at the LGA level, the different frameworks that have been created. You can better analyze or make an assessment based on feedback on the structures that have been created, pilot structures most especially, that can help to galvanize us as a people. I want you to probably suggest ways you think the people of Ambazonia, because they are very keen with the word unity, how can they have some semblance of a more collaborative front? I want you to suggest that before Barrister Fru and Barrister Mbeseha comes in, please.
All right. So I'm gonna make a suggestion and what I think our problem is. See, the desire of our people, first of all, let me say this: the desire of our people for independence and the regaining of our sovereignty is strong. It is unambiguous. But it is not just the desire of our people. There are basically no other options. Zero. Because there is no way of resolving this problem in Cameroon vis-a-vis Ambazonia unless the sovereignty of Ambazonia is restored. French Cameroon's own problems, and if you are from French Cameroon and you're listening to me, hear me now, but believe me later if you choose. You are not going to solve the problem of the rotten body politic in French Cameroon unless and until the sovereignty of Ambazonia is resolved. And so what can we, or what has held us back from being able to bring that unity amongst Ambazonians? Again, I gave you the example of Somalia, I gave you the example of Namibia, I gave you the example of South Sudan. There's also the example of Ireland. You know, Ireland fought under the political leadership of Sinn Féin and backed by the military leadership of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, to fight for its independence from Britain. So similar situation there. Part of our biggest issue in Ambazonia is funding. I'm going to tell you that. It is not because of the lack of passionate leaders. It's not because of the lack of will. It's not because of the lack of the fighters on the ground to sacrifice themselves. It's part of our biggest problem is lack of funding. And how does lack of funding affect us? Let me start with the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Sako. I have to ask you here, does he run this movement full-time or part-time? The answer is definitely clear, part-time. Do we have any deep pockets to support him so that he can get up in the morning and strategize with maybe a 5-man cabinet that is being paid to run the structure, to run the movement? The answer is no. So our biggest handicap is funding. And one of the things we have to try to do is to look for those or that deep pocket that can support us. And if we can find the deep pockets to support us, then we can have an executive that runs full-time, that gets up at 7 a.m. in the morning, get on a conference call, strategize on what next move to take, strategize on what next diplomatic move to take, strategize on what delegation to go visit. Is it Eritrea? Is it East Timor? Is it Namibia? To try to convince them. But a lot of the leaders in this struggle, including you, Barrister Fru John, including you, Barrister Mbeseha, I know you are retired, are still trying to put food on the table. We do not, you look, there's this book that was written by this guy from Canada. He runs this big company that is a competitor to Amazon. He said, this is what the guy said, and he's so right. He said, an average human being has 5 innovative hours in a day. We have 24 hours in each day. You can show up to work for 12 hours. But the time that is truly innovative, the time where your mind is truly transformative, the time when you can really make a difference in anything you're doing is just 5 hours. Outside of those 5 hours is just iterative task using brawn. But true thinking happens only within 5 hours. Come down to the leaders of this struggle. Where are they putting those 5 creative and transformative hours? They are not putting it in the struggle. They are putting it trying to put bread and butter on their table. So we do not even have the best of us trying to regain our sovereignty. So number one, look for that deep pocket that can sponsor our movement. The head of the Somali revolution or movement was not working part-time. John Garang was not working part-time. Sam Nujoma was not working part-time. Yasser Arafat was not working part-time. all of them were working full time, putting their mind, soul, and body into fostering the advancement of our people. The day we'll find those deep pockets that are willing and able to support Ambazonia's quest to restoring its sovereignty, our independence will be closer than we think. So you ask for my opinion, you ask for my advice. That's my advice. And I'm going to give you an empirical example to back what I'm talking about. I have participated in many delegations, whether it's to go meet Senator Dick Durbin in Illinois, whether it's to go to the State Department to do presentations, whether it's to go see congressmen and senators, whether it's to go see Karen Bass in California. All of those participations I have paid out of my pocket. So I still have to work to put food on table and then slice a little bit of that and sponsor the revolution. We are working on that tiny of a shoestring budget. That is our number one problem, sponsorship.
And you think that to some barrister, Fru Mbeseha, is what probably has divided some, who based on assumption have blamed others for embezzlement. Ambazonians are weaponizing finances to weaken the pilot structures we have. You can say that from SCAPA, the evolution of SCBC. It's true that some people have misappropriated resources. You can talk my trip to Boya, even the draft of the counties. You have county leaders who took resources and could not really account for. So there is also this issue of trust here. You see, Barrister Gana is leaning more on us being able to mobilize resources together to enforce the structures and the human resources that we have. Others are thinking we just need to dismantle it. And even when they create new structures, they still need money. And there's no confidence. Now, looking at what we have, I don't want us to comment about the same thing you just mentioned about finances. Let's look at other possibilities. How do we present ourselves as a more reputable, more organized movement in the international community that can be trusted more? Barrister Fru, please.
Paddy, I will answer that question by saying we have already done that.
Okay.
We have already done that by having a government and the counties and the local government areas. That is a structure that we have put together, and it is now for us to look for the financing, as Barrister Gana has succinctly put it. Our problem is finances. The structure, the unity structure that everybody can belong to has been put in place. It took us a while when we were going from school, governing council, and interim government, and all over the place. We finally arrived by having a government, and the government has been decentralized from the federal government to the counties to the local government. We have already done that. We have that structure. The problem now is the finances. If we can have a sponsoring finances, these structures will be reinforced and people will work full time. None of us, from the president down to the local government area, nobody has a salary. It's all voluntary work. And it is because we lack people to fund us, to fund us to behave like Sam Nujoma, John Garan, and all the others, Yasser Arafat and the others. They were being financed. That's what we lack. I want to come back to the core question. Do we maintain hostile neighbors, both Nigeria and Cameroon? My argument remains the same. No. Nigeria is a giant. Nigeria is, if you look at the corridors, we stand to gain more by talking to Nigeria and trying to get Nigeria to understand who we are and what we want. We have not done that because we're working, all the bodies working part-time and the structures are weak. What I'm saying is that if you look at now, we do more trading in Nigeria than we do with La Republic of Cameroon. A lot of the goods that come to Kumba and to Bamenda and so on come from Nigeria. It's a large corridor. From Mafe, when it gets to Mafe, it goes to Kumba and Bamenda. How many people are still running to Douala to carry heavy goods in trucks and go to Bamenda with? Not at this time of war. No, not anymore. Should we also be talking about Nigeria being hostile to us? We shouldn't say that openly and capriciously on the national television. Nigeria has Cameroon as a core member of the African Union, another independent country. They will be seen like interfering in the internal affairs of Cameroon if they give us any open aid. But the time is coming when we have to open that corridor and get Nigeria, talk to Nigeria, and establish some kind of relationship with Nigeria even before we have independence, before we have our sovereignty and have our structures. We should start talking to Nigeria right now, because from my opinion, I may be wrong, they are open. They are not permanent enemies. They are permanent interests. And even interests, they are not permanent interests, because every time things move, you have to keep repairing. I cannot envisage a situation where we have Cameroon, a hostile neighbor, and we have Nigeria, a giant like Nigeria, a hostile neighbor. Let's get away from all this negative talking. We know what Nigeria has done to us. They were not fair to us. They didn't execute the judgment that we had. They violated our international our rights as refugees. But is that what we should hold and declare Nigeria a hostile nation towards the Southern Cameroons? I will argue no, because I've talked to Nigerians, even old politicians. When we were in Abuja, we had some old people listening to the case, and some old man came and was telling me he knows more about Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons than I do. And he was telling us that we should not give up, because the British are the cause of our problem. He did not see Nigeria as a problem for us. But why should we now say that we left Nigeria, they were hostile to us? Nigeria was not hostile to us in Nigeria. We asked to leave because of the of the politics that was going on in the NCNC in Nigeria, and the British gave us self-governance, and that's why we left. But we cannot say the same thing about La Republic of Cameroon, where we went and joined by some oppression. Let me finish now. Let me finish. By some oppression of law, we got with them, and they have destroyed our economic live wire. They have destroyed everything that we established in Boya. They have destroyed our life. They have destroyed our villages. They have destroyed everything. Nigeria never did that to us. Why should we on television declare Nigeria a hostile neighbor? No, we shouldn't. Go ahead, Paddy. I'm through.
Thank you for that. When nobody really used the word hostile, and we're particularly analyzing the behavior of Nigeria now, which you also accepted
we're talking to each other. We know the word hostile was used.
Barrister Fru, let me talk. At least this is a conversation. Everybody has to talk. You have spoken and we're listening to you. So I'm thinking that I know that you want to be positive because you still want to keep the chances of you are trying to leave the chances open for diplomatic talks with Nigeria, which is a smart approach. But I also think that it is fair for us to express grievances, which should not temper diplomatic relations. We've seen nations that quarrel and they come together. Now, if you are saying that
It is
because of
late.
the relation,
It is late. It is late for
Barrister
us
Fru,
to talk grievances.
Barrister Fru,
It
let
is
me
late.
finish. Barrister Fru, let me finish, please. If you are claiming that the relationship between Cameroon and Nigeria is the reason why Nigeria is behaving the way they are behaving, I beg to differ because there was a relationship between Somalia and Ethiopia, but Ethiopia still took a bold move. And that's why Somalia was protesting. So it is about interest, which we think we need to still see more of that. But going so that we're not deviated, we should not deviate this conversation. It was about how do we present ourselves as a formidable force. And that's where I'm cueing you in, Barrister Mbeseha. How do we present ourselves? Oh, if you agree with Barrister Fru that we have a formidable structure right now, how do we make it even more formidable? How do we get better? How do we continue considering the human and material resources we have? Because we cannot invent what is not there. Based on what we have, instead of asking for more, like the children of Israel were complaining. Moses was complaining, and God said, "Hey, that's what you have on your hand. Strike the water open." So what we have in our hands now, those who are committed, the government pilot structures we have, the resources we have, what can we do with it to get a better image, to crack the right doors open, and to get this moving and get it quicker? Barrister Mbeseha, please, in conclusion, so that we can make progress.
Okay, thank you for having me once more. But before I get to that issue, which you have raised now, let me just say two things. Let me say two things forward. Uh, Barrister Ghana, like me, when we come here, we're not talking the government of Ambazonia, we're talking as analysts. We're simply analyzing things. Our analysis can put pressure on any party that we think. If I say I hate Nigeria, that does not mean that the government of Ambazonia hates Nigeria. No, we're just analyzing situations. And so I come here to analyze. I don't come to do the position of government. My analysis may help the government to do something better. So I don't know whether they push the doors open enough in Nigeria or not, but that is where we stand. Then the second thing I wanted to say, Barrister Ghana was talking about the Manfred Conference. Just a point of correction. It was 1957, not 1959. So we can look at that going forward. Yeah, the question you ask is what should we do now to be more united like that? Our revolution, unlike others that were mentioned, Eritrea, Sudan, that we all know, has come at the wrong time, at the time of social media. Are we united? I think we are very, very united. But the problem we have is we're on social media. Where in Cameroon, for example, in the 1990s, did you find the SDF holding a common rally with the CPDM? They didn't go to the same party, to the same rally. CPDM had their rallies different from SDF. And so you could not find CPDM people coming to infiltrate SDF or vice versa. Today we deal with social media. We create a government forum that were supposed to be there. You find people who come in there who are federalists, who ought to belong to a different forum. They will give you a different narrative because they also claim to belong to that forum. This is unusual because this is social media. Can we control that? Maybe I think we can, but it's quite very, very, very difficult to control that element of it. In the era of social media, what would have happened, for example, if there were a referendum today asking us whether we want to join Cameroon or want to be independent? I'm sure we're not going to have 100% people wanting independence. Some 30, 10, or 5% will be people who want to remain where one day. And so, where are they? They are inside here with us now. If we raise something, they bring an issue to distract us from what we're saying. Yes, we need money. We'll raise money and we're raising money. But what is our problem with the money? It is because of this social media. Again, let me say this before. Even if we raise tons of money here, once money is involved in any organization that you think in the world, there will be people there who will be fraudulent. It is not with us. The regular governments in the world, they are corrupt. Some people are corrupt there. I think we just saw Sarkozy going to jail, the former president of France, over the use of money from Libya. And so monetary issues are always like that. We're not going to be discouraged because of that. Here, MTT, for example, somebody initiated MTT. People contributed for MTT. There was an audit put out for MTT. But you find that people who never contributed anything, they have never even read the report. They are the ones spreading the issue of money was stolen, this was done. What if the money was stolen? What's your problem there? You contributed nothing. The contributor should say, okay, we'll no longer contribute or we'll double more. And so these distractions are what is bringing us all this headache for no reason. If the Federalists, for example, and the Unionists created their own group, call it a political party, where they will not meet with us to distract us in our discussions, we would have gone a long way. But here we are. We moved from SCACOF, governing council, interim government to government. To us, that is progress, legally and strategically. For them, there's no progress at all. So we are talking about government today, they are coming back to SCACOF. We want to talk about government today. Someone will create an forum and call it consulting. It's with us. Forgetting that consulting has been dissolved, SCACOF has been dissolved. We have something they call ROA, the Republic of Ambazonia. That we've never heard about them. But they are also with us. I found them in a forum discussing with us, arguing what to do. This is the problem of social media. These people who are not for us should belong to a different group. We will contribute the money, whatever amount we commit, we'll contribute, whether it is tons or just pennies. We decide what we want to do with the money. We hold the people accountable in our own way, notwithstanding what outsiders, non-contributors are saying about it. It is none of their businesses. If we decide to pay our president, if we decide to pay Paddy, that is not their problem. They cannot come to contribute in a budget for which they did not contribute financially. They cannot manage the occasion for us when we are the contributors. I think we are doing the right thing. The only distinction, which I don't know how we'll solve it for now, is how to manage this revolution in a social media era. Because right now, you say, well, we are not doing enough. They say that they don't know who to talk to. Yaoundé knows exactly who to talk to. Yaoundé knows exactly what our problem is. But while we move on, we say we want independence. Somebody can say, no, we need an Anglophone conference to go decide what we want. Whereas our opponents know exactly what we want. They know what is at stake. Listen to Kanto. They know these things. What we say in documents. They read these documents like us. And so I don't know how our clinicians will do it. If we can really filter our true patriots and possibly create a locked up group that nobody will interfere there, we can discuss the business. If you want to give $10,000, me to give 50, I give. What's the problem? The person who contributed nothing coming to vet how and so 10,000 was used. What is this problem there? You have no there. They will have no business in their own. People over here give the money give, and they sponsor criminals to kill our people, which they are doing. That's their own strategy. We can only condemn it, but they are there because they want the struggle to fail. So they remain where they want to be. There are people in Ambazonia who will live in Bamenda, who will live in Yaoundé or Douala all their lives. Just like when we left the Enugu House of Assembly. There are able people who did not go back to Nigeria. They are still in Kumba today. They have become Cameroonians in Kumba. And so I think that is the biggest problem. How to decipher these people who are who are detractors from rare Ambazonians. Yes, they talk about so-called MTT. Why is MTT so important to them? It is because they want to use that label to destroy somebody they don't like. Because even after MTT, we've raised more money than MTT. But they're only targeting it on the government of Ambazonia, which they don't like. What is happening with the money that is raised by Akuru? Every day on his phone, he said, contribute money right here. Nobody's ever asked him what he does with the money. Nobody's ever asked Choayaba what he does with his money. Or all these groups contribute money. And so, why are they so concerned with MTT? Because it's linked to President Sako. That's just all. So why should we give account of our money to somebody who did not contribute? If the money was stolen, so be it. Should the Ambazonian struggle collapse because somebody stole all the money for MTT? The answer is no. Because we are determined to move on. With the little that we have, with the tons that we might have tomorrow, it is voluntary contribution. We're not selling gold. We're just contributing out of pocket. We're not saying a delegation to go and sell cocoa or go and sell gold or whatever in oil in the streets of London. That's what I did. And so, again, our problem is social media, which has never existed until now during any revolution. How we can do it? We don't know. Like, for example, those who don't like us will come here and say, well, they were insulting Nigeria. Nigerians were even following us to say they are insulting them. But without the social media, they will not be following our discussion. They will not be following our discussions. But they understand that
Paddy,
that's how the way is. And so I think
Paddy,
that's what it is. Social media has come to stay. When Trump decided to go and bomb Nigeria, on social media, I'm coming. That's unusual. And he came.
Yeah, Barrister Gana, it's like you want to say something before we move on?
yes, I just want to inject a little bit into this whole idea of my trip to Boya funds. I think people exaggeratively think that my trip to Boya funds were embezzled by the Sako government, which is totally false. I've done my own private investigations. I spoke to the auditors who audited my trip to Boya accounts. Even the auditor said Sako's government did not embezzle any funds. So for any of you who might be out there watching this show, who might think that the Sako government embezzled any funds in my trip to Boya, the Sako government did not. Some of those funds got missing in Nigeria when people went to do transactions. Some of those funds were missing in a transaction relating to a dealer in South Africa. I don't want to get into details on that because that might be very classified information. And some of those funds, some of the authorities who were...
But Barrister Gana, I'm not cutting you short. All of these Ambazonians know. And even those who are propagating this story know. But for some political interest, like Barrister Fru said earlier on, you find, like you said earlier on, anybody wanting to be on top. If they cannot be on top, they look for who is there, they can bring the person down. So this is known. I don't really want us to belabor the point on that. I just thought it was important for us to look at what we have as a resource, human and material resource right now, to keep going, because we cannot keep wanting. We have to keep going. So to go into the next phase of this conversation, there's an important aspect of this that has to do with territorial sovereignty and integrity and our military efforts at the home front, which is what we're going to use to conclude. But before that, let's find out what Trump is saying based on his 11-month achievement and his recent move in both Nigeria and the world. Let's watch.
Over the past 11 months, we have brought more positive change to Washington than any administration in American history. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years. Our border was open, and because of this, our country was being invaded. This is what the Biden administration allowed to happen to our country. Tonight, after 11 months, our border is secure. Inflation is stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down. Our nation is strong. America is respected, and our country is back. When the world looks at us next year, let them see a nation that is loyal to its citizens, faithful to its workers, confident to its identity, certain to its destiny, and the envy of the entire globe. To each and every one of you, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless you all.
That was just a portion of President Trump's Christmas message, bragging. Should I say bragging? Or celebrating his victories. Interesting. I remember when Trump said something, and I wrote to you privately, Pastor Gana, and I asked the question, looking at these moves, what do you think? And you gave a response. But now let's look at what Trump did in Nigeria. It's important. We've had the Cameroon government. I want to talk on this because it takes us to the end of this conversation that has to do with the armed struggle that Gojidika proposed in 1995 and that is being executed. Cameroon government is doing everything possible for the Ambazonian movement to be tagged a terrorist movement. And the Trump and the American foreign policy is very critical when it comes to terrorist organizations. The Cameroon government has sent reports to the State Department that has been despised. And the United States, the president calls them one of our greatest partners because they have not even for once described our struggle as an illegal movement at either through a senator or through the state or any form. Even what is happening in court is in contravention of United States Constitution and even the laws. I'm talking the case of the Kansas City 3 and a couple of others. But this is what is happening. The Trump administration, less than 72 hours ago, I would say on Christmas Day, hit, in quotes, ISIS in Nigeria. Trump said something slightly different from what the government has said. But I'm looking at it from a different delight. Boko Haram, that happens to be fertilizing these terrorist organizations in the northern part of Nigeria, started with the help of certain members of Nigerian government. An intelligence report has it that they're being used for political gains, especially the Fulani headsmen. The same thing is happening in the Cameroons today with Atanganji Paul, certain CPDM loyalists. Ngala Gerard, very notably, is also sponsoring extremist ISIS like the Mbororo armed groups against his own people to counter the Ambazonian liberation movement on the ground. So as we are analyzing what is happening in Nigeria, we know the State Department is watching us, and we are giving this information for their intelligence. They have more resources than us to even know the truth. We're giving this information for free. I want us to look at how government and politicians in criminal governments like Nigeria, Cameroon, are the ones breed terrorist activities that come to haunt them and their people. We look at what is happening in Cameroon now because they want to counter the Ambazonian movement, and how some government officials sponsored Boko Haram. That is a bone of contention, and that has sparked insecurity within Nigeria right now more than ever before. And Christians are the most victims. Barrister Gana, please.
First of all, when we look at Boko Haram and ISIS in Nigeria, we have to ask ourselves, how did Boko Haram start, or when did it start? Boko Haram in Nigeria started, you rightly said it, that is, it started through the use by certain political elements or political leaders to use terrorism, pressure on the rest of the country as its tool. It started after Yaradua passed away. You see, before Yaradua died, And again, just to refresh you on who Yaradua was a northern political leader who succeeded Obasanjo. Again, Obasanjo refused to hand it to his vice president, Atiku, and instead picked a former chemistry teacher from the north, Yaradua, to succeed him. And Yaradua died during his first term in office. And who succeeded Yaradua? Goodluck Jonathan. Now, the northern leaders felt aggrieved that they had not, because Obasanjo is from the south, and Obasanjo served his full 8 terms. And then, though he tried to extend it to get a 3rd term, Atiku, again, opposed him. So, because of that spite, he went and handed it to Yaradua, just similar like Biden out of spite handed it to Kamala Harris. Is interesting that human beings across the world are very similar. But he handed it to Yaradua, and Yaradua died during his first term in office. And Goodluck Jonathan took over. And Nigeria did wonderfully well under Goodluck. But Goodluck Jonathan was an outspoken Christian, both him and his wife. They were outspoken Christians. So the Northerners felt aggrieved that they had not exerted their full 8-year term in office. And so they started this underground movement called Boko Haram to start some terrorist activities to put pressure on the government of Nigeria so that Goodluck Jonathan should not have a 2nd term. They could not stand Goodluck Jonathan having a 2nd term because, again, northern Nigeria is more dependent on government as its source of revenue than the south. The Igbos and the Yorubas, they are more advanced in trade, in industrialization, creating music, all of that. But the north, who are less educated, are more dependent on the state as their source. So they came Boko Haram. And some people even said there were politicians like Babangida who helped, and a lot of others who helped sponsor the creation of Boko Haram, which has now gone out of them being able to control it. It's like a wildfire. Terrorism, especially in Muslim countries, it's like a wildfire. Once you lead it, it's difficult to squash it. So is President Trump going and dropping a few bombs over the so-called ISIS-controlled areas? Is it going to quell Boko Haram down? Honestly, I don't think so. I think it's more just for public show. It's just more for public consumption. The solution to Boko Haram really lies in the northern leaders getting together, developing the heart and the mind and the will to work with the security forces there in northern Nigeria to quell Boko Haram and ISIS down. Now, the United States can help in logistics, in training, in being able to develop experts on the ground who can counter Boko Haram. But Boko Haram or ISIS in Nigeria, it's not an organization which you fight from 20,000 or 30,000 above ground. It's not going to work. So that is my take on that. But I just want to inject something into your question that you asked. Again, just stretch that issue of funding a little bit. When you look at the Ambazonian conflict, and again, you go to the roots of it, when did the current Ambazonian conflict start? It started in about 2013, when the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Education started sending judges articulating French civil law to Ambazonia, which practices mostly common law, sending those magistrates to our courts to adjudicate cases in there. The lawyers in the Ambazonian area started writing to the Minister of Justice for about 2 years, and there was no response until we had 2015, 2016, when it escalated. And during that same time, 2013, 2015, they were also sending teachers who articulate in French, not English, to be teaching students in Ambazonia or the southern Cameroons here whose medium of studying is English. But the reason why I go through this brief period of history is because I think that, again, going back to something that Barrister Mbeseha said, the northern Nigeria was English speaking, or the northern Cameroons was English speaking, and they could easily blend with Nigeria. The western part of Togo was English speaking, so they could easily blend with Ghana. But the southern Cameroons or Ambazonia has a different culture, has a different history, has a different Anglophone or British system style set up. And I think France, and I honestly think this, I think France had waited for a chance to sort of squash Ambazonia. But again, I believe firmly that France, knowing that Gaddafi was not too far up north, knew that if it started a conflict in Ambazonia to squash Ambazonia, Gaddafi was certainly going to come in with funding and training and logistics to help Ambazonia. And I believe that the instructions to send French magistrates and French teachers came directly from the French embassy in Yaoundé through the presidency. Because when did Gaddafi die? 2011. And when did they start pushing French magistrates? 2013. So it was because the French saw that there was no source of funding to us, no source of training, no source of logistics in the foreseeable environment and in the foreseeable future, that they started provoking us so that we could rise, and they could send in disproportionate forces to be able to clamp down on Ambazonia, defeat us in conquest, and seize our territory for good. It has not happened. It is not going to happen. Ambazonia is standing very strong and will continue to pursue our sovereignty until we get it. So, over to you, Paddy.
I'm very happy that you allude to this point of the only option of France and Cameroon right now is to defeat us in the war, because we have defeated them in the historical and legal debate. They are lobbying the media and organizations to despise our claim, to sabotage it. They are not even willing to have the conversation because we have already won. Right now, we have not won militarily yet, which is their last game plan. And if we just push through, that's gonna go. And I want to enforce on this, Barrister Fru, so that you can come in there. I think America should be paying more attention. America today is intervening in northern Nigeria to stop terrorism. And the question we Ambazonians are asking, do they want to wait until the Ngala Gerard vigilante and Bororos that he's paying with money only God knows where he's getting from, the conduct titles and their Tanganji forces, are they waiting until when it gets to the uncontrollable state before they can come in? Because I think the United States Embassy and the United States agencies on the ground have enough resources to identify that our liberation movement on the ground has been polarized, infiltrated, and sabotaged by Cameroon proxies, CPDM loyalists, and government officials. We had some people actually attesting that Cameroon was patronizing a certain armed group on the ground with weapons and things to kill the people. So I think we can conclude this conversation without really talking about this as an official end of year report to the United States Embassy.
Yes, Paddy. Let me in my non-analytic manner, because somebody on this panel says that I'm not an analyst. But let me say this. Diplomacy is quiet. Diplomacy doesn't make noise. There are signs that we all have to read. Even though those signs look general, I want to inform us, I think all of us already know that the Trump administration has withdrawn the American ambassador from Yaoundé. That is a man who was virtually living in Bomeka. He has been withdrawn, and he's not the only. There are many other African countries where he has withdrawn because he's planning on by January to appoint new ambassadors to the African continent. What is happening on the ground? None of us, even if we know what is happening, we will not make any comment because, as like I said, diplomacy is quiet. I want to think that Ambazonia is on the right footing. Ambazonia will achieve its freedom. Ambazonia will get what they are supposed to get, their ancestral lands. The question of where do we go from here? But Gana nailed it on the head. Our problem is financing. And we believe that somehow, we will get that financing and we'll sail through. Having said that, I want to emphasize on one thing. Barrister Gana was the one who talked about Northern Cameroon speaking English with Nigeria and the Togoland speaking English and joining Ghana. Those could easily blend. Let me develop that a little bit. We speak English with Nigeria, and we cannot afford not to open the corridor with Nigeria. We cannot afford to create any kind of suspicion and friction between the Southern Cameroon, Ambazonia, and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You see, the Nigerian politics is very complicated. When it has to do with the North, they act differently. You see, you may think that they are friends with Cameroon. Look at what has just happened to Issa Churuma. When he left Garwa and landed in Nigeria, Cameroon was there to pick him up as a highway criminal that has been running away from persecution. Nigeria should do this and that. The Nigerian government refused to turn over Issa Churuma. And they gave two reasons, the same reason that we held in court, both in Abuja and in Yaoundé. The principle of non-refoulement, and Nigeria has no extradition treaty with Cameroon. And the present Nigerian federal government used those two to tell the Cameroon that we are not going to hand Issa Churuma to you. But they didn't use that when it came to us. But should we use that too as a point of friction and have two enemies, two hostile enemies facing us? No. We may not be part of Nigeria, but we speak English with Nigerians. We had cultures with Nigerians. We have interacted with Nigerians. Even up to now, there are more Igbo people in the southern zone and northern zone than you will have in other parts of Francophone areas. We communicate with them. We trade with them. Some time ago, cocoa was leaving Kumba and being exported through Nigeria. When things were when this struggle when the conflict was getting hotter and hotter. I don't know whether it's still going on, but that's what was happening. So we need to also behave like Northern Cameroon and Togoland, the Togoland that joined Ghana to become Ghana, because they speak English. We need to behave like them and open that corridor and start talking to Nigeria seriously. That would be my wish. And as a non-analyst, as referred to me by somebody on this panel, that is my wish that we open the corridor with Nigeria and stop talking negatively about Nigeria.
Vice Fru, I think we have belabored that point a lot, but I thought that I wanted us to make progress in that conversation. So, because what I was requesting for...
No, that will be my last word for the day.
Let me finish now. I'm requesting for us to look at the terrorist activities of the Cameroon government or government proxies in Ambazonia that are kind of similar to what is happening in Nigeria. And the U.S. intervention, the other grievances part of approach with that. That's I think that's what I thought.
That was not the question you asked. That was not the question you asked me. But let me answer that. Let me answer that. Let me answer that. Look, I have come to realize that Nigeria was in collaboration with the Trump administration to carry out that operation, and I'm happy that it is happening, because it will reduce the Nigerian Fulani henchmen. Somehow they will get frightened and they will stop using our borders in the northern in the savannah zone to enter our territory and become a problem for us. If that continues, it will subdue the nefarious activities of the terrorist activities in northern Nigeria. It may not kill it. It may not kill Boko Haram both in Nigeria and northern Cameroon, but it will reduce their activities and they will be scared because firepower is coming. I think it's a good thing. Nigeria has supported it, even though they disagree. They disagree.
Let me rephrase my question so I can help you get the point, because you're still not getting the real thing that I really wanted. But that's okay anyway. This is the point I'm trying to make. Ngala Gerard, like the way Nigerian government officials have been behaving, is also paying armed men simply because he wants to sabotage the Ambazonia movement. For political gains, we've seen Nigerian government officials who enabled Boko Haram, and it is unable for them to contain it. And it is breeding activities and the inclusions of the ISIS and the Fulani headsmen. The same thing is happening in Ambazonia, that the Cameroon government wants to counter the Ambazonian armed forces by having every CPDM loyalist recruit armed men. Ngala Gerard, notorious of that activity, conduct titles, and Atanganji. That is just what I want us to focus on, because people watching the show that are not Ambazonians, I want them to be for us to really analyze this, so that the U.S. government listening to us can get to do their independent investigation. The other aspect of our quarrel with who is right on our approach with Nigeria is minimal concerning what is happening now. So my question is if America is aware of this, when are they going to take direct actions against Gana Valentine, who travels in and out of America, but is a sponsor of terrorist activities in Ambazonia?
I thought I answered that question by telling you that diplomacy is quiet. There are things that I know that I cannot talk about. About Jarangara, we will have to handle it by ourselves. But there are things happening that I don't need to talk about.
Okay, Mr. Mbeseha, please. In conclusion, please.
Well, in conclusion, let me go back to your story. Boko Haram is what we're analyzing now. And I buy 100% what Pastor Gana said. Until today, or recently, who knew about Boko Haram, ISIS, did not remain in Nigeria. It spread through Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And as of today, I've not heard of Boko Haram or ISIS in Niger or in Burkina Faso or Mali. Where have they gone to? Did these three governments, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, foreign troops come and blow them up. And so, as Barrister Gana says, an airstrike on one spot is not going to take out Boko. It's just a show. Going to take them out. That's a fact. But my greatest worry, continent Africa, the largest country, Nigeria is the largest country in Africa, population-wise and perhaps in the economy. And this is a continent that has been saying that the United Nations should give us a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. I hope that when it comes, this Nigeria will be one of those candidates who will postulate for that post, for that position. But is this an African country that cannot mark territory? That will require to go the permission to go to the US or any other foreign country and ask them to come and bomb off a particular spot in their own country. The spot they knew. The Trump administration will not come there unless they knew the particular spot that they were coming to bomb. This is an African giant reduced to rubbish. That's my take about the bombing. And so we go further and ask the question, which I've asked, Ngara Gerard, and so on and so forth. Remember, we are 9 years old in this war. The war broke out in the first Trump administration. During that Trump first administration, Trump defined the problem of Ambazonia, which nobody has changed it. Trump said the solution will be found when the parties go to the conference table without preconditions and arrive at the conclusion. That is still the narrative today, not only for America, but worldwide. So Trump knows what is required in Ambazonia. He's back to the office. He understood the problem long ago. If he can do something, he would. But do I expect him to come and bomb out somebody called Ngala Gerard? He said, that's not what we expect from him. Because how Ngala Gerard and the infiltrators operate, they don't have a camp where you go and bomb it. Unless you're asking that they should go and blow up the prefecture in Kambe or in wherever it is. That's not what we expect from him. They have the tools, the American government, be it the Trump or whoever is in the White House. They have the tools with them that they can use to hold them accountable. They can hold them accountable if they want. And remember, what happened even in Nigeria, before the strike, Trump had limited immigration between Nigeria and US. Those are tools that you can use. Even after they bomb the place. And so back to Ambazonia again. The Americans have a whole full understanding of the problem. I don't expect, maybe they will do it, I them to come and bomb out a building in Kambe, in Kumba, or Bamenda, calling it the headquarters of Ngala Gerard or the infiltrators. Infiltrators live among us. And so the administration had the tools to do what they do. I would think Trump will do it because he is the only, at least the second president, the third now, since the crisis started, who has understood our problem. There are so many international tools available for the administration to take to make this state good for us. They understand them. They can take those actions. They will take those actions. And to conclude, let me say, me personally, I did not say that Mr. Nsoh was not an analyst. I said I sit here as an analyst and I analyze positions from how I come in. I don't sit here analyzing as the Secretary of State for Communication, as the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs. I'm not doing that. I'm just giving my input as an analyst. Those people who deal with diplomacy, if it helps them, so be it. They cannot take my word for the government of Ambazonia. And so that point should be corrected. We can disagree, but that is my opinion. I didn't say that Mr. Nsoh was not an analyst. You're an analyst in your own way. You look at things differently from me. So be it. That's how the world is. That's how diplomacy, that's how democracy works. Speak what your mind. Nobody quarrels with you with that. I speak my mind. So be it. I hope the government will learn something from what I said or reject all what I say. That's still good. But I'm not talking on behalf of the government when I analyze issues here. And so again, as far as Ambazonia is concerned, Trump has the card. He can play that card without even throwing a single bomb in Yaoundé. And they'll have some money. He's capable of doing it. He can do it, and we hope he will do it. Over to you.
That's amazing. I think we've had a holistic conversation with diverse opinions brought in there. We've arrived at a logical conclusion, and the assigned commission secretary for foreign affairs that is here, the scope of things in anticipation of the president's speech come December 31st. We're sending out official publicity immediately after this broadcast. In a few days' time, the world and the people of Ambazonia globally will be listening to their president talk to them. Where would you say we are ahead of this address? Where are we in the scope of our movement? Where are we? What should we anticipate? What should we be expecting? Most probably in 2026. What do we think the president will be looking at this critical time? Mr. Gana, please, in conclusion.
Thank you very much, Comrade Paddy, for that, for hosting us, and thank you to our very learned and my senior comrades, Barrister Fru Nsoh and Barrister Mbeseha here. Thanks to every Ambazonian from every corner of the globe. Thanks to all of those who support us in their kindness, with their means, with their suggestions to push this struggle forward so that Ambazonia can truly regain its sovereignty. As we've said, in any organization, you have tools and means that you can use to pilot the association and the organization. As we've said, the need for diplomacy is very critical. As we've said, Israel has recognized Somaliland, most likely not because they sat on their laurels, but because they organized themselves, they have dominion and control over the territory that they have, and slowly but surely, Somaliland is going to achieve its independence. As we've also said, having the means, having the resources to pursue our quest, to continue pursuing our quest for sovereignty is very necessary. It is very clear that the contributions that come from Ambazonians, and we want to laudably thank Ambazonians who have contributed towards every effort to regain our sovereignty and who continue to contribute. But as we've loudly said, having the right amount of resources to pursue a restoration case, the restoration case of our sovereignty, is of prime importance. We just saw a few days ago how, due to lack of funding, Europe, Germany, and France leading the way, the EU has pledged about $103 billion to support the effort in Ukraine. That is just to tell you that without the funds to be able to support Ukraine, Ukraine will not stand a chance in its fight against Russia. It applied to South Africa when the ANC was at the forefront to liberate South Africa from the grips of apartheid, and financial contributions came from all over the whole world to support the ANC. And the ANC leaders like Walter Sisulu, who governed the organization from abroad, worked full-time. In fact, there was an office in Washington, D.C. during that time, headed by a gentleman called Randall Robinson, who headed an office called Trans-Africa that was dedicated almost solely to the support of overthrowing apartheid in South Africa. Resources matter. Means matter. In Sudan, the Southern Sudanese would never have gotten their independence had they not had the financial means. The Namibians would never have gotten their independence had they not had the financial means. Even when it came to the Irish Republican Army and its fight against England to free itself, they sought financial support from the Irishmen in the United States, including support that came from Muammar Gaddafi. So it is very clear that in our diplomacy, in our other initiatives to push for our independence, financial support is very, very necessary. So Ambazonians, food for thought. Without the necessary means to pursue diplomacy and have other countries recognize Ambazonia and have other countries bring our issue to the UN Security Council, this government is going to have only that shoestring budget to keep the fight afloat, but not to defeat French Cameroon. And it is not that difficult to defeat French Cameroon. So as we conclude 2025, as we appreciate the fact that even indigenes of French Cameroon in the stupor of their own mess are looking over to Ambazonia and saying, Ambazonians had been right all the time. Only a just fight can overthrow that barbaric regime in Yaoundé. As we see other people looking back and wishing they had the guts of Ambazonia to keep pushing for its sovereignty, we have to remember, we have to have that food for thought in our minds, that the finances that this interim government needs to continue to pursue our course to independence is very, very necessary. So if you feel it in your heart, voluntarily in your heart, reach out and support the interim government. Reach out and support the pursuing of our restoration case. Reach out and support even the defense of the Kansas City 3. Because as we look towards sentencing, we are looking towards appealing the judgment of the judge or the verdict that came in, because the judge botched both procedural law and substantive law. Because through the actions of the judge, the ruling or the verdict from the jury was very prejudicial against Ambazonia. We faced this fight in 1953, and we got out of the Eastern House of Assembly. We faced this fight since 1961 to establish our own separate state, to emphasize and establish our independence consistent with UN Resolution 1608, UN Resolution 1541, and UN Resolution 1514. The fight is not over. Nobody ever gave Ambazonia a chance that they were going to be in this fight for 8 years going. In fact, Bia's generals thought they were going to round up Ambazonia in 3 weeks, because you have supported the interim government, because you have supported the just fight, because you have supported the interim government from doing all it can to stop French Cameroon forces from getting into our village and slaughtering our children and slaughtering our women and raping our women. Because you gave them that support, Ambazonia stands tall. The wild Southern Cameroons stand tall. So as we conclude 2025, be there for Ambazonia, because Ambazonia is always going to be there for you. Thank you, Comrade Paddy. Thank you for the great work that you do. Thanks to all the restoration forces in the ground who are doing the right and the just work to defend Ambazonia. God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Gana. Thank you very much, Barrister Fru, Barrister Mbeseha. We will be having a major, I'm not sure, we might not have any live broadcast again until the 31st, because we're putting some things together to get a perfect stream of the president's speech come 31st night at exactly 8 p.m. Ambazonia time. We'll be on live a few minutes to time. I'm told that the government has a report that the commissioned Secretary of State for Communications and spokesperson of government would have to give. There's a report that comes just before the president's speech. I would like to still have some of you, Barrister Gana, Barrister Fru, Barrister Mbeseha, to be analysts or pre and post speech analysts of the president's address that night. Lots is happening. I would say again, there is no better way we could have concluded tonight's discussion. So much that needs your involvement, we, ABC Networks 24, is calling on members of government, most especially counties that are yet to meet up with their 2025 dues for ABC Network. That is important for you to do so. And to remember that ABC Network, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation, is a 501c. For all those who are making their freeway donations, we usually will respect the tradition, making sure that we recognize what could help you as you plan to file in your tax early next year. So we will be reaching out to you with some letters to remind you of some of the commitments that you have on this platform. You've just heard that what we need as we keeping on this movement is your financial involvement. That is superlatively imperative. It can never be overemphasized. We want to thank all those who participated in the Be an Angel dual fundraiser between Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporations and Health and Social Services with Women's during 2 weeks ago. We want to thank all those who participated during the Christmas Carol nights on Saturday. We will be having special live broadcast starting tomorrow night. That is 24/7 broadcast right into the president's address on the 31st night. I'd like to remind you on some of the things that are happening at the home front. Just one of the many documentaries that we have in detailing the mayhem, the unfortunate situation that our people are faced with. Until the president's address night, see you and good night.
In the heart of Nigeria's sprawling refugee camps, stories of loss and resilience intertwine. Amongst the echoes of displaced lives lies the story of Cheta, a young girl whose spirit refuses to be extinguished. Orphaned, displaced, and battling cancer, Tabot is still standing.
My auntie bring me here in Calabar for scan. The scan, I don't really know what the scans, they didn't tell me. My auntie just held the paper. We went back to the house. She now took the paper to the hospital. They now say that they can't do anything, that it's more than them. For now, my auntie now sent her sister-in-law to take me to General Hospital. We came here to General Hospital. We forgot the referring cards at a camp.
Tabot's journey began in the lush lands of Manyu, southern Cameroon, and the ongoing war snatched away her childhood, claiming the lives of both of her parents and leaving her an orphan to navigate a world torn apart.
The thing is not showing anything. The doctor now referred me to Dr. Ojong. Dr. Ojong told me to go to the house and come the next day with my mom in the hospital. I came with my mom. He told my mom that they have to operate me here on my neck and remove one loose node on my neck. They take me to theater and remove the loose node on my neck, lymph node on my neck. They bring it here and did the test, even in Abuja. They found out that it's cancer.
In a foreign land, amidst a sea of unfamiliar faces, Tabot found an unlikely hero, Dr. Charles Ojong, who stepped in as a beacon of hope, orchestrating a path to healing and rallying for support beyond borders.
I met Tabot sometime in March 2024 while I was working at the General Hospital. She was referred from the health center in Bakassi, where she lived as a refugee, And when she was referred to the General Hospital in Calabar, the medical superintendent at the General Hospital saw her a couple of times and then referred her to me as a specialist doctor at the General Hospital. So when I saw her, based on my history and examination with her, I thought she possibly had what we call lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. And I took her to the theater in General Hospital and performed a minor operation on her we call cervical excision lymph node biopsy. And after I did the operation for her, I took the sample to the teaching hospital where a test called histology was done. And after the histology, the diagnosis of a Hodgkin's lymphoma was made, and we're advised to do another test, which is only done at Abuja, called immunohistochemistry. And so the sample was taken from teaching hospital and sent to Abuja, and an immunohistochemistry was done. And after the immunohistochemistry, a diagnosis of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was made from Abuja. And then she was referred from General Hospital to teaching hospital because the management of cancers in our environment is typically a teaching hospital disease to be treated. So that's how I had to refer her from General Hospital to the teaching hospital in Calabar for further treatment.
As we report these events, this is more than Tabit's story. It is a narrative shared by countless young souls longing for peace, longing for survival, which is a plea that reverberates through the hearts of many.
So after she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and referred to the pediatric unit at the teaching hospital and was seen by the pediatric oncologist, she was placed on a treatment that is called ARO-CHOP, and it's a treatment that is given in 6 courses. Each course, or in 6 cycles, each cycle lasts 3 months. You give it and repeat it after 6 months. So she received the 6 cycles, which she started in June, and she finished last month, and she has responded quite well to her treatment.
Now, will you lend your voice to their silent cries? Together, we can turn whispers of despair into shouts of hope. Join us to shout it abroad, to extend a hand and wrap these young girls in a tapestry of compassion and possibility.
I would love to be a nurse in my future if I have the opportunity to go to school.
Tabit's story is heartbreakingly unique, yet universally familiar. Stand with us, because together we can transform lives one story at a time.